Hey Paul, how you doing?
Hey,
For once I
Greg.
got a little good news this year, so this weekend, but
Oh
you know,
man, this is the Boston Massacre in reverse, man.
the
This is
Bo the Boston Massacre of five hit games. You know, so,
uh, holy cow. Okay,
yeah.
the last two innings of last night
Oh,
between both teams, I thought I was watching Little League baseball.
well,
This
did the
can't
Red
make
Sox
it
have an
up.
earned run the entire weekend? I mean, it seemed like every run. I mean, the night that Schindler pitched, I think every run was unearned, all six runs or something like that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This goes back to 2 years ago when the Yankees were playing the Dodgers, and the scouting report that the Dodgers had, and it was really, kind of sneaked, got released by somebody, but
Sure.
but that's the narrative is on the Yankees is like you put the ball in play, you run the bases and put pressure on them, and they will fold. And sure enough, we go back to
Yeah.
Judge dropping that ball in center field,
Sure.
uh, missing a cutoff runner. The whole that what game was that? Was that game three?
Yeah, it was
Maybe.
it was game four, I think, where he dropped the ball, right? Because I was like,
Yeah,
because yeah,
but they missed a cutoff runner that Soto missed a cutoff runner, and they got
yeah,
to advanced bases, and that was the series because that was a
yeah.
big game they lost. But
You're right.
but that's the mo. Excuse me,
Yeah,
on them now, and boy, because once they shut down their third, they're realizing, God, my brain's not there tonight. Our third baseman that they got the real good glove,
yeah,
and excuse me, and then sure enough, there was an error at third base tonight. So,
yeah.
but those both teams last night was just that's some pretty ugly baseball, man.
That Abreu error in the ninth inning was just
Yeah.
he's a two-time, I think, Gold Glove winner, and it's like, Jesus, I hope that's his I'm not
Well,
hope,
and
but I think that should
then he
be
kicked the
that should
ball,
forfeit
or
this year's. What's that?
didn't he fumble the ball the next
Then the
inning?
next, I was actually doing some work, and Jake was watching us. What? And I get a text on my phone. What the F for you? It's like here he goes again. So yeah, no, it was a tough one. But I think yeah, I think like I said, I think it shows Yankee lineup, and same as the Red Sox were struggling all year. They put too much pressure on Anthony without him in the lineup. It looks like a minor league lineup. Same thing I think with the Yankees. These teams really rely on those star hitters now. That when they leave it, it's like we're spending $200 million on this.
Right. No, it's bad. It's
It's weird too with I thought the Red Sox, and I know Cole hasn't had a great month, I think coming back, but it seemed like Devers always hit him, and obviously they haven't faced
right.
Devers left, and and I was surprised they got to him a little bit the other night, but
Well, yeah. I mean, if you go into the series and look at the pitches we're going to throw, you think, oh, there's no
yeah.
way we're not going to split.
Oh yeah, sure, sure. Well, the Red Sox it's funny, they're much better set up in the pitching department. Assuming Crochet comes back to any level, because he clearly has got some shoulder issues, and it could be something that shuts him down for a long time. But if we got into a series again with you guys, which again, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of teams between us and the wild card. I think all we could throw a few more arms at you than we could last fall. I think it could be an interesting series, but man, we just can't hit. It's starting to
I
hit a
mean,
little
if
better
we
now,
get
but
Fry
yeah.
back and stuff, that's our starting rotation. Now, of course, when you
No.
get into the playoffs, you only need
Oh yeah,
three.
that's
You
right.
don't need
Yeah,
five.
Freed's now. That's right.
Yeah,
Freed's out right now, right?
Free.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So if you get him back,
yeah,
and then with Cam and
yeah,
Cole and Ron, I mean,
sure.
that's a pretty good.
No, what else is kind of interesting before we leave them? And I noticed as well. We're talking about Rice earlier, and he struggles in Fenway. He's a 0 for 14 in a series, and he's a kid from Cohasset,
Yeah.
and he's obviously big time talent. And I think that he might be suffering a little bit from not having Judge for protection in the lineup, um, but Schistler is so good against the Red Sox.
Right.
He thrives on it. He hates the fact that he's getting crap from from the hometown fans. And Rice seems to feel the other way. It's almost like he doesn't want to beat up his boyhood team, because he's struggled with the Red Sox. A couple of years ago, he had a couple of home runs against them, I think, but this year especially, his numbers are really weak against the Red Sox. So it's kind of interesting how the Red Sox let
So,
them get
like you
away the
said,
game.
going back east, bringing the whole family. We're
Yeah,
going to the stadium, and it's not looking good right now. Of course, we will be playing the Twins, who we
yeah,
tend to, even when we're
yeah.
horrific, we always own the
Oh yeah.
Twins. So,
How many times have you beaten them in the ALDS? It was like an annual ritual for a while. It
oh
was
yeah,
like
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, literally, it's got to be less than like 1 or 2 wins in the last 2 or 3 years. The Twins in just the regular season.
I remember the one year they had you guys down. I think they
Yep.
had you down 2-1 and in Minnesota, and they brought Johan Santana back on 3 days rest.
Yep.
And I think I'm a big believer in I'd rather save that I'd rather throw the lottery ticket game 4 and bring my guy back well rested for game 5. Obviously it would have been
But
New York.
or
And
throw a bullpen game.
yeah,
Just let him run a
exactly.
couple innings.
And on top of it, he throws 5 innings, 80 pitches or something. Like if he's not going to give you 6, 7 innings,
Right.
why bother bringing back a 3 days rest? Unless
Yeah, I mean,
unless you
unless it's an elimination
Ah,
game,
exactly.
that
Because I
doesn't
always
make
felt, I think I talked about before, I always felt that's what Torrey did wrong in that 2004 series. He
right.
went for it that game 4 night. And once he kind of blew a hole in his pitching staff, Red Sox had those two rubber arms in Wakefield and Lowe. And that I think was the key to the whole thing. And the fact those games were all condensed together. But I thought that Torrey, and again, I think the managerial playbook is to go for the jugular there.
Yeah,
But I think I don't know. I'd rather come back with my horses rested, especially with the way they treat
yeah. Like I
pitchers
said,
now.
it's not
Yeah,
an elimination game,
yeah, no,
you know,
exactly,
and
exactly.
and
But
baseball's a funny thing. You get hot one night, all of a sudden you
yeah,
blow up
that's
for
all it
you
is.
blow up for 8 innings. I mean, tend to mostly you get into the playoffs, and it seems
Yeah,
like the pitching will always beat the hitting in the
yeah.
playoffs.
Well, that's why the home run ball becomes so important in the playoffs. I think because you have so few missed pitches. Your pitching is better or whatever. So when you hit the ball, you want to get a run
Did you
really quick. Um,
did you catch the quote from Posada talking
no.
about? Hey, they asked him what he thinks about the game now, and he went into the analytics, and he just said the game is garbage now.
Yeah. Well,
It's
it's funny.
classic.
It's funny now. Like everybody's doing it, right? 'Cause it was
Yeah.
if you watched the movie Moneyball, probably is a little
Moneyball,
more dramatic about it. But everybody that was about time everybody jumped in on it once John Henry brought the Red Sox there and opened big market teams to it. But now you wonder if somebody else went away from it. Could they be successful if they stopped getting caught
Well,
up in?
you talk about
Yeah,
Mattingly over in Philadelphia
yeah.
and the Phillies, and same roster. It's just I mean, what is it? How much does a manager really control?
No, that's
Because
that's the point.
the staff is doing all the stats for everybody. This how much man and you may be thinking that maybe they're letting them Mattingly actually manage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like everything. It's like the NBA and everything is everybody's copycats. And so you mentioned it right just a second ago.
Yeah.
If someone kind of flips the page,
Yeah.
could there be a change? I mean,
Yeah.
I mentioned this before. One of my boys was a pretty good baseball player, but it was really we one time went to a showcase and literally they brought back a kid that was on his team, a teammate of his that he's been a teammate with for probably 6, 7 years,
Mhm.
um, because he was a big, strong kid.
Mhm.
During batting practice, his exit velocity was great and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but you throw him, kind of go back to the Clint Eastwood movies, something about the curve or what was the name of that movie? And, that this kid would never have hit a
Oh, yeah,
curveball.
yeah, no, yeah. Can't hit the curve. I know exactly.
Yeah.
He's a
So,
Brave Scout, right? Yeah, his daughter's a Brave
yeah.
Scouter. Yeah, yeah,
Right. And so,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and
Trouble with
so,
the curve. Trouble with the curve.
trouble with the curve. Yeah.
That
And
was it.
so,
Yeah.
um, with my boy, it was you had to watch him for a few days. He did all the
Yeah.
incidentals, advance on a base, read a good ball and stuff. So you wonder, will the page turn? Will we ever get back to a little bit of the organic, managers, the Casey Stingle? Now that's an old name for you kids
Oh,
out there,
sure, sure.
and stuff. Or is this just going to be the way it's going to be?
Well, I found that even coaching youth baseball, you could get guys who could, usually you had guys who had good plate discipline, etc. But there was times when you really needed it's something you didn't even necessarily hit, you needed a good at bat. And you
Right.
needed somebody to go
Right.
out there. Like I always wanted my leadoff hitter. Um, I always knew I was in trouble for really the game if my leadoff hitter didn't give me a good at bat. It at least challenge the pitcher. If he went down and flailed on 3 strikes, and I used to. I moved my lineup probably a little bit like they do now, but you're kind of when you get your best hitter up with 2 outs and nobody on in the first inning, you already feel like you're backwards. You already blew one chance for your lineup. And I think that I think there needs to be a. I think a lot of the on base percentage stuff is really nice for the regular season and over an aggregate. But you get in these short series, and you got to hit some baseballs. You're
Yeah.
not going to get these walks like in the regular season. I always argued that I don't think A-Rod was as bad a clutch hitter as he was a bad hitter against good pitching. And I
Yeah.
think if we really bifurcated his statistics during the regular season, he wore bad pitching out in historic rate. And I don't know if he really hit good pitching during the regular season, but in the regular season, you get so much bad pitching that you can be a stats compiler. And then it comes out in the postseason, you don't see that pitching anymore. Now you're seeing top end pitching. That's why those teams got there. And so some of the hitters' stats adjust to the fact that now they don't have the pitchers to beat up on anymore.
Yeah.
But I tell you one
Yeah,
thing,
in the playoffs, it's always the pitching will beat the hitting
oh,
every
definitely,
time,
definitely,
every time.
definitely. And we're watching. I
Which
kind of
was
spent.
which in the spirit of really going back, we'll go back to the '90s when the Yankees beat the Braves,
Yeah,
which is the great anomaly because you put the Braves pitching
yeah,
staff back then, that might be one of the
sure,
best pitching staffs in the history of
sure,
Major League Baseball.
yeah,
And then and they lost in Toronto. They lost two.
yeah,
Excuse me, in Atlanta. Goodness gracious! And
yeah,
they lost two in New York, and they were going to
yeah.
Atlanta. Excuse me. So it was really a
Well, I think
desperate
I
situation.
think Yankees had this. They created the secret sauce during those seasons too with Rivera, and then even the year they had Wetland and Rivera and
Yeah,
Rivera
so you
Wetland.
really could shorten that game down
And
to
they
about
really,
six
yeah,
innings.
really, and they had great pitchers to handle those innings. So, again, yeah, if you put their career stats together, or if you had to go 3 or 4 times through the lineup, yeah, you'd want to take Max Clavin or Smoltz, but to get 2 or 3 times through the lineup with Jimmy Key, it's not a bad place to be. He's gonna keep you off balance, that's for
Yeah,
sure. And they figured out how to make. And it was almost that's one of the things I liked in the movie Moneyball, and they talked about you don't have to replace a player, you got to replace his component parts. And I think that's what the
yeah,
Yankees pitching always seemed to do during those years. They were able to put together pitching staffs that didn't pop your eyes out statistics, but they got the job done.
yeah.
So but one place I actually spent the whole day, had to do some work. I was out here in California and also spent some time watching World Cup stuff, and exciting day. I kind of gotten to enjoy over the years. I was growing up, I would never watch soccer, but you appreciate it now, over all these years, and just really, again, the best stuff in this country right now is the World Cup. It's just
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's so raw and passionate, and some absolutely great matches. Say even the ones
And, and,
extended. It was
and
a
it's fun
great match.
watching these different cultures. Was it now? You were back in Fenway when all the Scottish
Yep.
were there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They
And the
they
Norwegians too
drank the
were big
bars
into
in
it.
Boston under the
Yeah.
ground. But is it the Scottish that, or so I can't remember which community it was that's got addicted to ranch dressing?
Yeah, they love it. Yeah, they and the kid with the Doritos. They talked to the kid. He was like about Doritos. Yeah, there's a picture in a meme I saw that had they showed the Scottish coming in, and then there were all these svelte guys in their uniforms marching, and they're going home, and they're saying we're our GLP-1s because they're all obese from all the food
Yeah,
and drinking. So yeah, they really they brought it. I tell you, it was again it was something you like people have talked about. They want to have reunions or whatever. I'm sure these people they want to save their money for next World Cup round, but it's almost like you can't recreate that
no.
happens. It can happen out of
Well, it's
nowhere.
so
Trying to
spontaneous
recreate it
just
doesn't work.
with the community of Boston.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, you take the environment of
Yep.
of what Boston's such a sports
Yeah.
town, and Boston, the Boston folks don't they're pretty much second to none on their bars,
Yeah, exactly.
you
You know
know.
what the other thing about Boston too is this was also one of the almost drawbacks of it sometimes is it's really small. I mean, you can be across
Exactly.
Boston. I mean, when I went to BC, you could literally be across Boston in an hour and cover most of it. And so if you had I'm assuming like, when I was there, I went to Fenway, I went over to Boylston Street and pub there, and to meet up with people is nothing. It's not like in New
Yeah.
York where you're in Brooklyn, I'm in the
What
Upper
borough are
West
you in,
Side.
right? Yeah,
We're a day apart. It's like
exactly.
people get together quickly, no matter what hotels they're staying in, and I didn't get over to Dubliner, but I think that they actually had to close the pub the day after the Scottish left just to give their staff a break because and the English came to town and they were all ticked off and it was kind of funny, the English coming to town and the 250th anniversary when they were all upset. So yeah, it was yeah, I kind of keep my oars in the water with Boston media and it's been pretty interesting. But I think I think it kind of, in my opinion, a lot of what it's showing is it's showing our dysfunction, because I think it's just, and I mentioned this, I think in one of the earlier shows is that it's amazing to see them come here and looking at America through their eyes, and they're just like I said, the ranch dressing. I mean, the stadiums. I don't. And again, I've been to when I went to see. I've been to a couple soccer stadiums over in Europe. I went to Dublin a few years ago to see BC play a football game in the soccer stadium, and I went to Gothenburg, Sweden to see Springsteen a few years ago. And they're very nice stadiums, but nothing like our football stadiums. And I think they're just overwhelmed at our football stadiums. And again, they should be because God knows the owners of those teams milked our taxpayers to pay for them. But it is they I think they see the things that we don't necessarily always appreciate. And I think it's great to see the America through their eyes, and that I think it creates some pride for us as
Yeah.
well.
And I think it's such an ironic turn given, this is the week of the 4th and the
Yeah,
200th, 50th anniversary, but we got World Cup kind of really headlining
yeah,
everything. The NBA championship's over. This is kind of a little bit of a lull, and
yeah,
in the sports, I mean, it's All Star game will come up, and that's a little bit of a plug for the
yeah,
MLB. But really, I mean, you look back at the nuances of everything going on right now. It's just kind of ironic a little bit. It's kind of nice for the World Cup because it gives an environment that they can be showcased. I mean, I was I was disappointed that you didn't bring home the win for the U.S. the other night.
yeah,
Uh, that's
yeah.
kind of a weird game.
Yeah, we I
But
was
that's
and I
the
was right
thing about
outside
soccer,
there.
right?
I was picking my son up at LAX, and you could literally see the helicopters over SoFi there. And I was listening to it, and then afterwards, their flight they were on the tarmac for like an hour, so I went over to pick them up some In and Out, and all the Turkish fans, especially, started coming in. I was like, how many Turkish fans, or Turkey or whatever saying it now, were in the In and Out Burger outside of SoFi? But yeah, that was it. Was I listened to most of that match, and it was exciting. I mean, I think when I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but Pulisic came in,
Came
you could
in,
just
yeah, big,
feel.
big,
I'm listening to it, and you could hear the enthusiasm. I think it'll be Wednesday. I think it's going to be really something. I think. I
yeah.
mean,
It was crucial to get him in to
yeah, exactly. No, get him
get some
some playing
play
time.
time.
We're trying to put together a I as you know I like everything is early out here. Like I used to love when I lived out in Southern California, waking up at 10 o'clock in the morning for Patriots games and
Yeah,
stuff.
there you go. Yeah.
So we've got the world. You'll get it at 6. I'll get it at 5 on Wednesday. But we're trying to get a local Orange County gathering of our friends together,
Oh,
and the
fun.
bar is telling us there's a really good bar we want to go to. They're telling us you better probably be here 2 hours early if you want to get a double-digit group seating. So they take a reservation for 20, so we're trying to like take people off the street now to get to 20. So, but it'll be fun because it'll be one of those open air places, so it'll be almost like a watch party. I'm sure people won't even be in the bar, going to be watching from the outside. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for that. Yeah, it should be really good. But the other thing too is I was thinking about it. There's a lot of people around the world who are going to think, gee, to beat the United States 2 days before the 4th of July would be better
Oh,
than
right, right.
that. And yeah. And then people are saying now, watch out for Bosnia. They're not going to be that easy. I mean, today we saw don't underestimate any underdogs because they were all tough. I mean, it's that Germany loss was just because
Oh
we
my goodness, can you believe
we
that?
we beat Paraguay like a drum just 2 weeks ago, and
Yeah.
so I mean, and I think I mentioned I watched that friendly we did with Germany on D-Day of all day, D-Day anniversary of all days, and Germany only beat us 2-1, but they really dominated the state of play. So I'm figuring transitive property. Paraguay's got no chance against
Yeah.
Germany, and they won, and Germany probably outplayed them, and they got a controversial play there, but it's really exciting, and I think. It's interesting too because now you're talking about already trying to start to talk about Trump's going to hand the trophy to somebody, and here's a guy who I'm sure has never any use. I gotta correct that. And I think about it. And lucky loser, he did play some soccer when he was younger, and he's always a bully type, but he did play some. I think he did play on his high school soccer team a little bit. But I mean, just you're obviously you don't think your average bag is a big soccer fan. It's like,
Right. Yeah.
so, but they'll be chanting USA pretty loudly, I'm sure. Even though they won't understand the offside rule, they will be chanting
Right. Yeah.
USA pretty loudly on Wednesday through whenever, however this goes. But it would be funny if Trump. I was telling my son today, if Trump had to hand that trophy to France of all countries, because
Right.
that's the one
Oh
I
yeah.
think drives him the craziest. So.
No, Italy. How about Italy?
Well, Italy's not in it, but yeah,
Oh, that's right.
but France is probably the odds-on favorite right now,
Yeah, they
especially
are. That's what I
especially
see
when Germany and
watching
Netherlands
this
get knocked
afternoon.
out. It's really probably France and Argentina are probably the two I think
Yeah.
that have clearly stood above everybody else right now. Um, but we're getting to this, and I think part of the division in the country, it's funny. I was listening. I heard a quote from Joy Reid where she said. She doesn't know any black people in this country. They're enthused about the upcoming, holiday. And you take a step back and say, again, can you blame, couldn't you blame
Yeah.
people who not only they had to go through their history, but now if you think about the arc of whatever we're on, we're not exactly on high point as far as human rights go, and you could, I mean, you definitely feel it. I think like you were talking about nothing like 1976,
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
you have the history, and then you go through the civil rights movement, these type of things to make some ground up, and then you turn around, and you have an administration that is making efforts to whitewash the history.
mhm.
So how many times do you get punched in the face and just supposed to smile and say, "Please, may I have another?"
Sure.
And I think it was Megan Kelly was on, and just I think. Oh, goodness, my brain is very not
I
100%.
saw her. I saw her babbling some craziness. Yeah, about
Yeah, and then
yeah,
had Don
yeah,
Lemon, just ripping
exactly.
on, and she went on about how, because of the Supreme Court decision and the Haitians and situation like that. But she went on about how we built the country, referring to the white, and how we, um, you know, did all this, and then he went off and said, "Well, actually, enslaved black people, that's who built the country," and just really took issues with her, conclusions, and I can't believe it, how we recycle um, processes or opinions or approach to things, and go, when we have a commentator like herself saying, go back to where you came from. I'm like, and I was, and I was just reflecting, some of my reading lately. I said, we're Schultes, so we're German.
Yeah.
Okay, and I mentioned one time we came through Newark, and
Hmm.
then on my mother's side is Irish. I said, so if I go back 100 years, I got German and Irish, but we're just we're the not real respected group of people in the country. I mean, our ancestry, we lived this stuff
Yeah. Well,
relative
I
to
tell you the truth,
immigration.
if Germany would take me back and give me EU citizenship, I mean, I don't want to be anti-American, but that's a pretty attractive offer. It's not an offer that exists. It's one of the things that
Yeah.
they like to say, just go back. That's not an avenue that really
No.
exists. You go
I mean,
back, you
didn't
got to have a
Canada
visa to
recently
stay with
went
somebody
back
coming
one
in.
more generation, though? I
Yeah.
think
Well, it
Canada just
depends.
opened
Yeah,
up another
we
generation.
are we've we've thought about we're kind of people where, and this isn't anti-American, ever wherever we go we kind of are interested in living there. It's one of the reasons we
Yeah,
wound up in California, whatever. And so when we were in Europe, we're like, hey, this could be kind of fun. And nothing against the moment at the U.S., but just it would be fun. And we looked into it, and we were probably, I think, one generation off in Ireland. Actually, our best opportunity might have been through if my grandfather's parents had come from Poland about 7 years early, 7 years earlier, we would have 7 years later, we would have been able to qualify through Poland for EU citizenship. Was our easier route, and we didn't do a ton of research, but just on the surface. But no, but they make it like you just go back. Well, that's not really a thing. We're American citizens. Our passports are American passports. We're trying to make this place better. That avenue doesn't exist.
yeah. I
But
mean, I'm reading a book with the orphan collector,
yeah,
and so it's set in World War, around World War One.
Yep,
Well,
sure.
it's actually set during that time,
Yep.
and a lot of the characters in the book are, but it goes through the, German, and the Germans are uh,
Mhm.
obviously not beloved, and and
Mhm.
particularly World War One, we're fighting the Germans, right? And but that I just can't help but reflect, because our ancestors came through the Newark around 1850, 1860. So that was our people, man.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's just intriguing to me how the cycle repeats. It
Yeah.
just continues to repeat, and we don't really learn a lot about. And I mentioned this on one of our earlier episodes. What I'm looking for is, I get tired of, let's make the borders secure and stuff. I'm like, no, let's find a solution, man. Let's come up with a
Yeah, yeah,
practical solution to incorporate people into our economy,
yeah.
to help. If folks want to come here, there must be something good about us, and let's make it practical in a way that they can do it. Because you and I talked about this before. We know there's a need for it, and it can enhance the economy. That this They're not taking the jobs. They're not taking our,
They're,
place.
they're they're
Not
not they're not the reason they're
replacement is
not
not happening.
they're not the reason your $1 million house is more expensive. They're not competing outbidding you. It's
Right.
like,
So it's just a very, very um, simpleton mindset
yeah.
of, let's just close the border and keep these people out. And to what end? What is, if you're a capitalist, what does it do to help the market? What does it do to help our workplace? I can't see of any. So I'm like, I'm looking for someone to stop with, let's just close the borders and let's find a solution for
Well,
folks.
I think it comes down to, I think, Paul's is it's not the issue. It's the issue
Right.
is I think the issue stems from financial insecurity, which, again, we now, I think the betterment of our country live in I think, and again, even probably through, our early years of our life. And I can't even say we didn't get the benefit of it, that if you were a white man, you had some, pretty good guarantees, white straight man, especially, it's some pretty good guarantees in this country that, now are more, hey, it's more open competition. And, and again, I love the phrase, and it's funny because the guy who kind of first told me this phrase, it's not uncommon, but as a guy who I think is a pretty big Trumper now, but he said, you were born on third base and you act like you hit a triple, and I think that's most
Very
white
true.
men in this country. We want to be like, oh, we pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. Well, our bootstraps were pulled up the minute we were born into our the things that we have, and we didn't do anything special to get that. We're lucky. We won the birth lottery in this
Yep.
country, and again, not all of us obviously are going to be part of the wealthiest families, whatever. But we had a leg up, and I think that there's an insecurity now. I think there was a great Saturday Night Live episode. I tried to pull it up. It was a skit. It was, and I know the date of the skit was. It was just before the election in 2014, the midterms. And in the skit, the whole thing was about, it was like they were throwing a party. It was almost like an infomercial. And they were saying, white people, you had a good run. It's over now. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this is exactly the moment. So you think about, like, there's all this debate about the Democrats not paying attention to their autopsy to 2024 election. Well, there was a really good autopsy the Republicans did the 2012 election to Romney losing.
Right.
And they said, that the Republican Party in the future, it needs to be more open to more factions of people. It needs to be more a bigger tent, whatever. They obviously decided the complete opposite. And Frank, and God bless them, it's worked pretty well for them. But so this is right before the midterms in 2014, which they won pretty well. This is the reason why, we couldn't replace Bader Ginsburg in time, et cetera. And it's just at that moment, and I almost feel like, were they picking at the scab a little too much? It got white people to the point like, wait a second, we put the brakes on all this stuff, you know what I mean? Because we don't want our, whatever history to end in this country, and they've kind of, like I said, been more successful than I ever thought they could have been.
Yeah, and, so as you pivot to these other, with the primary Mandani, and then I've been watching
Good.
this week. It didn't take long for Fox and these folks are, and this is something that Trump has been very good at doing. But jumping in on this Democratic Socialist, and and that is the boogeyman that's coming for you, and stuff, and it made me think of Truman. So how many? What are we talking about? 52. So now, we're getting close to 80. 8 decades, and the play card
Mhm.
hasn't changed. It's
Yeah,
just, there they go. It's just the same old stuff. And I wrote an essay. I've never put it out there to myself about what socialism is, because
yeah,
and and I said, well, if we're going to go pure capitalism, then we're going to say, okay, we're going to have private fire
oh yeah,
departments, and you're going to have to make a contract with them. You're going to have private libraries, and the list just goes on and on.
sure.
Ambulance, or whatever those services that we just take for granted.
Yeah,
Whether it's security, so police department stuff. Because if you want to go all in on this capitalist mindset, and nothing's good as we, gather our resources together, um, to provide ourselves services. It just defies logic and stuff. And I'm always intrigued by the folks. I have friends a lot of friends that have served in the military, like yourself and stuff. But that's the biggest social network there is. I mean, it's supported from our taxes,
yeah,
and it's provided a service. And so but Fox has popped on that. I mean, the sun hadn't gone down where they're just, let's pull out, 1952. So let's pull our old playbook out, and let's run, let's do it again. These democratic socialists are just, and I'm personally, about me, I'm
sure,
going to probably mention every episode we have.
sure.
I'm dedicating the rest of my mortality
Yeah,
to universal health care. And I think, and if you take a play out of the GOP and say, okay, they took what, 2 decades, 20 years about to overturn Roe versus Wade.
yeah. Oh, well, really, really 50. I mean, really, you go back to
Well, yeah,
1973.
if
I
you go
mean,
back, but I
but
mean,
they they had that long-term plan. You're right. They gained traction over the last 20 years, but they
yeah.
really,
Well,
really,
they had
crazy
the
how long it took. They did
yeah,
the long
and they
game.
had
Yeah,
the philosophy about who they're going to
yeah,
elect, which who and then
yeah, sure,
obviously
sure.
McConnell played the
Yeah.
Democrats like a fiddle. Um,
You mean weekend at Bernie's McConnell? Because God knows if he's still with us. So,
Well, I think
where did,
we've got to be like that dog on the bone, right? And decide
yeah,
this is just something that's going to take us this long, but we've got to say this is just what,
sure,
and just start fighting,
yeah,
fighting for it, and it's going to take a change of approach. And I think, watch New York now and Manani, you can just say, okay, let's start watching the how,
yeah.
because he's making things happen in the political world. The pace that he's making things happen is unseen, unheard of.
And I think it's a beautiful thing the way he's going about it. I think it, and again, I think it they're really the core goes back to the eight things we talked about, and that's really what
Yep.
they're delivering on. I do think we're seeing a definition of socialism now. It really sounds more like definition of communism. It's a
Yeah.
socialist. A socialist wants to spread the wealth. They're not into the state owning the
No.
factors of production, which is people are trying to put that on them. But I think that was one of the things if you think about you think about the mistakes of the Obama administration, because obviously Biden was always he was always it was always difficult. First of all, having just Trump, it was, you read War, I'm reading it, and part of the dialogue is Trump constantly, taking
Yeah.
pieces. But where Obama, and a lot of it was because Ted Kennedy died, but Obama had that clean run at the beginning, and it was almost like he put so much energy into, ACA/Obamacare. Could we have done more than one thing at once? Because
Right.
if that was that moment when we had the supermajority in the Senate, we could have be a veto-proof majority. The word supermajority gets used a little too much. We had the veto-proof majority in the Senate, and really we could have enacted anything we wanted to at that moment. And I understand that the ACA was and again it would have been a better law if Kennedy hadn't died, or if he hadn't run, frankly, in 2008. I think he ran in 2008. Either way, he could have not. We could have had a replacement in 2008, and
Right.
obviously Democrats would have won. It was that. I remember that special election with Brown, and that made it much more. The Democrats had to concede a lot more to get the votes to put it through. But I think I think what I love about Madami, like you said, it's the pace. It's the no. Tell us why we can't do it fast. Tell us why we can't do it now. And I think, and I do think there's also a for the people who are now are you're trying to obviously trying to use it as a wedge issue. These three people getting elected, and in my opinion, is these are three of the more liberal districts in the country, right?
Absolutely.
And they elected, and the word is representative. They elected the people who represent them. Those people are not getting elected in every even Democratic district in the country. Democrats are going to win, and that's fine. That's what civics is. We put those people together. Now, I'm hoping that these people all are somehow attached to the 8 issues we discussed, because
Yes.
I do think those are winning issues for Democrats, and I do think that the notion that we're Republican light and we're not leading. I think there's some relevance to that. I don't think it's just a far left excuse anymore. I think leading, and frankly, you can make an argument that's all Trump did was try to lead. He didn't make policies, but if we can lead from a place of making people's lives better, I think that doesn't just get us because that doesn't get us one election. That creates a movement, and that's where we got to
Right.
get to. That this doesn't
Well,
become a
and it
change every
pivots
four
to
years.
it asks the question, right? Ben's the question is okay, so why do you want to be a leader? What's the purpose?
Exactly.
So I can say I have the title. I had a
Mhm.
really strange experience. So years ago, um, every state has an activity association that runs the high school athletics. So here it's Utah High School Activity Association, and how it works is you have leagues and they elect a chairman, and the chairman goes and serves on the state executive committee. And
Mhm.
I was fortunate enough to get elected. And so I was the region chair. I think it was Region 5 at the time, and served on the executive committee. And then I ended up serving on the board of trustees, both. But the thing that I found out that was really intriguing, I then went there with a very naive mindset. I said, hey, ultimately, I want to represent my region, but I also want to make whatever is the best decision for all the high school athletes throughout the activities, even, because they do drama and debate and music. So for all the student in the state, well, man, I found out, I'm telling you, within the first meeting that it was a territorial thing. It was like, I'm going to vote for a rule or a league or a policy that benefits my group, not necessarily what's best for the entire group. And I always wonder about our leaders, what, regardless of what side of the aisle on, the why is it that you want to serve, or you just caught up in the power of that's why I love when people talk about, hey, if the government closes down, nobody in Washington gets, none of the senators or representatives get paid. Let's figure this thing out. But folks, in the military and those folks are the ones that go out. But the why is it that you want to serve?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's got to be. I always say this about, yeah, I like about policemen, and I think it definitely extrapolates to the military. Is you'd like to think that people have a calling, that this is
Yep.
what they're doing, and I do think some of the times we run into trouble with police is because it's not a calling. It's a job that's going to get them a 20-year pension and this and that. And so I think that that ability to have the patience that it takes to really be um, a public servant may not exist. And I think it's the same thing on our politicians. And this is something where, I think we want a businessman as our president. It's like, well, frankly, not a very good businessman. But secondly, is don't we want somebody who's got a calling for service? Isn't that somebody who you want making the decisions for what's better for people? And I think again, you get back to they want what's better for a very select group of people and not necessarily what's better for people at large. And that's
Yeah,
where I
and
think
I
we're
think
missing the boat.
and I miss Karen tonight because she always has a good way to reference
Yeah,
President Trump. I'm always looking
exactly.
forward to how she references him.
Yeah.
But he's a gentleman that wants a legacy without the footwork.
No, exactly. No,
I
exactly.
want to be remembered, or I'm the most, I was the best president for
Yeah.
the blacks, and but
Yeah.
maybe except for, I mean, he goes on and on,
He
whether I
wants his
put my
names
name
on
on,
buildings. Yeah.
Kennedy,
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be, without any footwork. And then you look at the experience with Obama's, I don't know, what do you call it? Because I usually mention it as a presidential library, but he went way beyond that this time, with the
Yeah,
Mary Bird
sure,
Community Center.
sure.
But the outpouring and the response to that, and, who attended, and the way they presented themselves that day,
Yeah,
so as where I think the word's overused, presidential.
yeah.
But clearly, he didn't have a perfect presidency, but the legacy is there, and President Trump wants a legacy without any footwork or any
Exactly
results.
right. Right. He wants everything, he like he wants a Medal of Honor, like or
Right.
not even Medal of Honor is one thing, but he wants a Purple Heart. Well, you get a Purple
Yeah.
Heart for getting injured in battle. Like nobody really wants a Purple Heart.
No,
Nobody really,
exactly.
no
Right.
one even people wanting a Medal of Honor if you've done something that's honorable, but any I think legitimate soldier wouldn't want a Medal of Honor unless they earned it. They would be embarrassed to do it. And again, he does, but you're exactly right. He doesn't want to do the work. That's why I think he's trying to put the names on his buildings now because it takes him. You look at it. I mean, Obama is such a respected president. There's not a lot of things named after Obama yet. There will be. There'll be an
Right.
opportunity. There'll be, Chicago will build a new airport and they'll name it after him. So he'll get his name on things. But these things, except for in a case with JFK, take time because
Right.
usually it's going to come. He's got to put his name on it now because he knows in the future they're not going to
Oh,
put his name on anything.
going to be dissipated, and well, the Kennedy Center is still covered with
Yeah.
a tarp.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can't make you can't make as an educator. I see children mature and and try to figure out things, but I swear sometimes I feel like we're watching a child have a temper tantrum.
And that's where the
Yeah,
lucky loser
I'm going
goes
to take my
into.
ball and go home. I'm going to
Yeah.
leave the tarp over the Kennedy Center so you can't see that my name's not there anymore. I
Right.
mean, it's like a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Well, then you look at too, even the way, and again, I know this is a little bit of political maneuvering, but the way he's treated this rent assistance bill,
Yeah.
he's never going to get the SAVE Act passed, and
Nope.
yet, he's going to hold up something that frankly would help a lot of his constituents in the midterms, and he's going to hold it up. So yeah, they're gonna say, well, I voted for it, but at the end of the day, I saw a poll today. It was a legitimate poll that had them down, I think, double digits on the generic ballot, which is just it's that's untenable for them at this point. I mean, and like I said, I think as we go past the 4th of July here, we probably want to start doing part of our thing with just some poll tracking,
Yeah.
because I think
Yes.
I think some of the stuff. Especially we're hearing from Tellerico, I think is really compelling, and especially what he's doing in Texas now. But I think that the Senate, I think, is very much in play. I think one of the reasons why this whole McConnell thing might be going on, where nobody knows what the hell's going on with the guy, is that they may not want to have a special election in Kentucky in this cycle. They want to
Right.
get it because I mean, hey, frankly, Bashar would do himself pretty good if he would say, "Hey, I'm going to give up the governorship and run for senator,"
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
they've tied his hand as far as what he can be as governor of Kentucky. I think he'd have a good chance of winning the Senate seat, and that could be everything. So I think they want to get that, and they've I think Kentucky used to have that he could name a replacement, but they took that away from him, knowing that they could run into the situation. So it would be open to a special election. That probably wouldn't happen for, well, it's not going to happen on election day. That's for sure, unless I think we're hitting that thing. But I think if there's a reason, like I kid around that they're weakening at Bernie McConnell, I think that's the reason why. I think they're trying to make sure that they get the election on the pace they want it. And again, he's obviously no friend of Trump's to begin with, but that's another thing too. I think is going to be really interesting. Yeah, I think these Supreme Court cases this week have been kind of fascinating,
Yeah.
and it's going to be interesting because I think he's getting really, really
What do
upset
you?
at the people he's
Yeah.
named to the Supreme Court, kind
Yep.
of taking turns
I
to
mean,
to undermine,
I mean, he's won a lot of crazy stuff.
yeah,
Now,
exactly,
I
yeah,
mean, he's
definitely,
won stuff that he should. I mean, you
yeah,
overturn Roe
sure,
versus Wade, but he lost on the mail-in ballot piece. He
yeah,
lost on that.
and he
He
lost
lost
on the
on the
overturning the,
defamation case against him. He wanted
yeah,
that overturned. I
yeah.
mean,
They
I mean,
basically said he's a rapist because they wouldn't
yeah.
overturn that one,
Now it's official.
So if you're him, if you're thinking if you're him now, okay, suppose the Democrats win the Senate and they have enough, they're going to be in leadership in November. I think the conventional thinking is he's going to go replace Thomas and Alito during the window there. But I honestly think of this differently. Trump doesn't care what happens to the Republican Party once Trump isn't part of the Republican Party anymore. And I think he might be worried about replacing Thomas Alito because I don't know if he thinks he can control the next people the way Thomas Alito he doesn't have to control. They just they're right there for him whatever
If
he
he
wants.
doesn't, if he loses the Senate, if
Yeah.
he doesn't have leadership, then we just do McConnell. We just sit on
Well,
it for 2 years.
the problem is if he loses the Senate in November, what's the stop them from not trying to do a lame duck session to get both
Oh yeah, that's
Thomas
true.
Alito and
Between
reach
yeah,
out.
between November,
So
you're right. I didn't think of that.
the long-term Republican view would be get somebody for next 40, 30, 40 years. But do you think Trump cares about the next 30 or 40 years? He cares about
No,
I've got 2 more years and I've got my two solid guys who vote for me no matter what. Do I want
right.
to replace them? Because I don't know if they're going to be because and then you're going to turn
That's true.
around and that Senate before we replace them is going to have Rand Paul. It's going to have Susan Collins at that point might be willing to just do her concern thing all over again. But it's going to have Murkowski. It's going to have Cassidy. It's going to have Cornyn. It's going to have I'm slipping on the guy from North Carolina, but all those guys, they very much are not aligned with him at this point.
Not
So
at
he
all.
doesn't have 50 votes in his pocket anymore. And if he tries to go with a crazy right-wing judge, I could see them saying, I don't owe you anything anymore. You primaried me and got me out of office. What
Yeah.
do I owe
I
you at
mean,
this
yeah,
point? Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
If he would primaried,
Yeah.
and he will become the fastest lame duck president.
Oh yeah.
Literally, and so you're right, he'll have that 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. They get till January 1st till the Senate's replaced.
Right.
So that'll
So,
be but
so 8 weeks maybe.
but I don't think they're going to be on board for doing his bidding. And he frankly is going to be he's not going to want a moderate because he's not going to want somebody who might do
Right.
when he sees Gorsuch, Amy Comer, and even Kavanaugh a couple times has stabbed him. He's going to want to be careful that he doesn't lose his two guys that are going to support him. Now, he doesn't have to worry about the long term because a Supreme Court justice 5 years from now could overturn some of the stuff that's working in his favor now if
Yeah.
these become Democratic liberal judges or justices, and or if we I think the next and again I understood why Biden didn't do it, but I think the court has to be expanded. The next
Yeah,
Democratic
I think
president has
that's one
to.
of one of the main platforms of
Yeah,
our friendly democratic socialists is expanding the court.
exactly.
And there's a lot of and actually expanding the House of Representatives, which there's a lot of, I think, legitimate reasons for that. When you talk about the how much the population has increased, since the last time it was, what is it, 1920-ish, right in
Yeah.
there.
And
So
there were
we're talking
nine
about
appellate courts
a
then. Now there's
century.
13. Yeah, the
Yeah,
13 number makes a
exactly.
lot of sense now, and
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be a price of admission for a Democratic candidate. Again, it might be hard, but I think it's gonna be the right thing to do, and I think
But
we're
my feeling
good.
is take a page out of the playbook of the GOP and just
Yeah,
start saying, just beat it down. It may not
yeah,
happen this term, but just
sure.
say this is something that we're not giving up on. We're
Yeah,
not gonna, I think during during that difficult campaign with Biden then switching to Harris and stuff. I mean, there was discussions about um, expanding the court, and I think Biden, trying to, Biden was so old school and just remembered when there was actually diplomacy and
sure.
and working together and compromise and stuff, which he did. I mean, he pulled, the infrastructure bill will always go down as an exceptional
Sure.
bill, but I think he still was trying to play nice and call back to a day that doesn't exist nor will exist for quite if ever again. And so my feeling is we dig in for universal health care and expanding the court and expanding the House of Representatives and just saying, we've got to take a page out of the book and start playing hardball and really dig into these issues. And it may take 20 years, but let's just say these are non-negotiables, and this is what we're going for.
I think Biden. If I had it, in my mind, and because I got to say, this is probably the way I was thinking at the time. Is I think Biden looked at, and I think the tradition in the Democratic Party, the center of the party, is to
Exactly.
look at the center of the electorate and not want to turn them away.
Yep.
I do think, like I think I've said on here before, I think they're the most effed up people in the country because there's somebody who voted for Obama, voted for Trump, voted for Biden, voted for Trump. Like the kind of
Figure that
psychopath is
out,
this?
right?
And I think what I think that where I think we need to look at is to energy, because really our however you want to look at our curve isn't like it isn't like a bracket that flows up and nicely to center. The curve really on the left side has sort of almost a cliff on the far left. We have a lot of voters in the row. The key is to energize them and get them out. And I think that
Well,
if
and it goes back to your what you
yeah,
said though, that middle, if we can get people educated,
yeah,
because those 8 issues we talked about,
yeah,
if you were to take those 8 issues and put them in
yeah,
isolation, you would
exactly.
say those are democratic socialist
Yeah,
issues
yeah,
or those are
yeah,
extreme left issues. I mean, if you were just to do it in isolation, that's where they would fall. They're not really, well, their
yeah.
accent just came out there. They're not really centralist issues. They're really left progressive
Well,
issues.
but the thing is, something that's supported by 70% of the people shouldn't be
That's
considered
the,
extreme.
now
It shouldn't be considered
isn't
extreme.
that the silly part about the whole
Yeah,
conversation? But
yeah,
it would seem extreme if if
yeah.
Fox runs a story tomorrow. Well, I watched, I can't remember who it was. They had a video of a Republican senator just no, it was Johnson. It was the
Yeah, yeah,
speaker, and
yeah,
he was going down and listing all the things that trying to make it sound terrible, and the commentary was laughing. He said, "Well, that sounds pretty good.
yeah,
That
exactly.
sounds pretty good." So his very attempt to seem it's sound so extreme and stuff was backfired because it all made sense, and I couldn't help but think of our episode with those 8 issues and
Yeah,
say, "Well, you're just reading the things that are popular with people."
exactly. One of the things and again, this I think as we get toward the season, I think these are the things that we really can. I have a lot of fun with these things, and I think we can really focus in on. But and this is a 2028 issue, not a 2026 issue, and I'm constantly preaching to people. We got enough work to do in 2026. Don't worry about 2028. But my son and I were talking a little bit today. He's 25, and we were talking about Massey, and again, my first image of Massey was his family's Christmas card with them with their guns. So I don't have a lot of use
Yeah,
for Massey in general. But as far as moral courage, he displays more of it than your average Republican. And again, that's not saying a lot, right? But I think does he and he now has an agenda, right? He is he's going to go out with both guns blazing,
oh
literally.
yeah,
If somebody's going to read the Epstein files on the floor, it's going to be him. And I think he becomes we always worry about obviously every time that we might get a independent Nader type candidate who's going to put a monkey wrench into any chance we
right,
have electoral. If Massey runs a campaign in 2028 with somebody like a Marjorie Green, that becomes really dangerous to the Republican Party because he now gives people who are like, you know what, I can't vote for a Democrat, but this crap has to end an
yeah,
off ramp. And I think it becomes he now. And my son was so enthused, says the young people like him so much, he might actually take some votes away from the Democratic Party, but I gotta believe he takes more votes away from the Republican Party. Again, this is more of a reason for us to be on the far left. But he becomes a really compelling figure where he goes next. I mean, you could almost make a really strong argument that the most moronic thing the Republicans did was primary him because
yeah,
keep your
yep,
enemies close. And now they've made him a free agent to go do
yep,
whatever he wants with no allegiance to anybody and frankly with an agenda. And you get the guys like Cassidy and Cornyn, whatever these guys, they've got a following and they're gonna have some power and I think they're gonna be really interesting as we head, as we get through 2026 and God knows we got to win the House, and we really need the Senate because we got to stop him from from abusing the judicial more.
with the Supreme Court, yep,
Then we
exactly,
start looking at 2028, and there's a lot. I mean, I think 2028 is going to be the most fascinating presidential election, and I think of our other republic's history, and I think as we sit here on our 250th anniversary, it's kind of a daunting moment because we might be thinking about it in the history books like, gee, we were sitting there not thinking about it when we were celebrating, and here it comes. So
Yeah. Well, and Vance is out there. I mean,
Yeah.
let's get this, all right.
Eh,
Vance on the View.
Yeah.
I mean, who would
Well, and and
who
and
would
appear
ever?
and appear and apparently Nixon wasn't such a bad guy in his eyes, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah. It would have just been a 24-hour.
Uh, but he frankly he probably is right.
He probably is.
Frankly, and I think that I've said before to you is I think that the issue is that Nixon we were worried about was Nixon when he was going to be what Trump has become. He never
Right.
really was given the opportunity to become Trump because good people knew to stop it. And so yeah, it would have been Nixon didn't do anything there what Trump was doing. That's what I don't think Vance was trying to go there, but to me that's the way I read what he said. Um and
Yeah, I mean, but the 20, for Vance and the capacity to say, okay, basically he's jumping in both feet with 28 right
yeah,
now. I
oh
mean, he's,
definitely he has to.
and I mean, and so I've always, I think President Trump is not happy anytime the attention is not
Yeah,
all on him.
yeah.
So while Vance is already starting to make these rounds, it's always intriguing. I could see President Trump eating a Big Mac and just getting ticked off.
Oh
That
yeah.
hey, whoa, whoa,
Mhm.
whoa,
Yeah,
and how that's being coordinated behind
yeah.
the scenes with both staffs.
Well, plus Vance has got to start to make some calls about does he run towards or away from Trump? And I think
Exactly. Well,
obviously,
I think he's made a little bit of a
yeah, he's
call
trying to make some
because
trying to
I
make
think
some daylight.
he's
Yeah,
trying to distance himself. He's trying to. I mean, again, I don't mean to repeat myself, but I'm going to. He's on the View.
yeah, exactly. No, exactly,
you know
exactly. He's
and he's trying to, you watch him, you can almost hear the screws just turning in his mind and trying to play nice with these people and not not get after. I mean, we'll be asking these questions about race and stuff, and he's not giving Trump answers. He's not behaving like Trump there. um, and so he's conscientiously trying to create a different appearance
yeah.
than President Trump, which kind of plays out like how does that behind the scene dialogue again between their staffs and things
Yeah.
and coordinate. If you go back to my understanding is there was quite a conflict over the war that
Oh, yeah.
JD Vance really didn't. He was the guy that says, "Hey, I don't. We shouldn't go."
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think he is smart enough to know this is exactly what we ran against.
yeah. Well, some of
Yeah,
the things that happened, and I was interested. I think that the Secretary of which went over maybe finance. I'm probably not using the right terminology, so I apologize. But anyway, some of the major folks that were going to deal with the economy weren't in there. Use a little Hamilton now. They weren't in the room.
yeah, no.
So, these things were being decided, and the folks that were going to have to, manage a lot of the,
It was a bunch of failed New York real estate
yeah,
developers. It was, deciding, and mostly probably because they wanted to figure out how to turn this into beach running. Well, I think one of the things too, as we go through the next few weeks, one of the things is you bring up the war. I think bringing up and as we circle back on the World Cup, bringing up a little bit how the Iranians were treated, but I think more importantly the dignity in which they acted.
exactly.
And I think it says a lot about them. But I do think we're running in we're going to run into a 2026 cycle, but the 2028 I think they always say the day after the 2026 after the midterms are over, the next general begins. But I think that it's almost going to be like there's an approach shot the 2026 midterms towards the 2028 more so than normal. I think that people are already kind of have to position because I think what Vance is doing by going on the View is A, he can compare mascara secrets with
Yes.
the host, but B, he's figuring I'm gonna lose some of the MAGA base.
Yeah.
I can't possibly win if I stay with some of these positions, and some of these people are gonna be that's a deal breaker for them. I got to figure out how to get again that voter in the middle back on my side, that suburban housewife who was a Republican traditionally, who's now become a pretty strong Democrat. And he's figuring that calculus out. I think that a lot of these MAGA, the most extreme, are going to go back. They're going to slither back under the rocks that they came from, not be voting again. And he's got to figure out how to put together an electoral base. And he's got to figure out how to win a primary. And will the primaries again be a Trump love fest, or will they start to actually run against Trump? Who's
I
going to run? Will the Massies run? People like that, you
yeah,
know?
I think I think again you're reading war
Yeah.
and the impact that Trump has. He keeps. I don't think he now. Let me say that I don't think he can go away gracefully. I think he'll always want to be. He won't be a W. He won't be a Clinton. He won't. That
Yeah.
they normally respect because they understand how hard it is. Um, I don't think he'll ever go away quietly as long as his health, you
Yeah, well,
know,
that's a
intact.
whole
But of
that's a whole
course,
other
with
subject.
him
Yeah.
and with his social media, it doesn't even have to be him. We don't know who,
Oh yeah.
well, we do know it's him half the time because of
Well,
the
we know it's not him when it's written in proper English and grammar and coherent.
exactly.
You
So
know,
when we
so
see the normal,
yeah, so yeah,
the grammar is, but I don't see, I'm not optimistic of the party
oh, yeah.
moving too quickly away from Trump. I think
Yeah.
he'll,
Well, that's his health is
he'll
the
run
first
it.
step. His health is,
Yeah.
and I know they're talking about this that a couple Lou and whatever really driving home that he's getting some compassionate care type medication, which obviously is usually an end of life type of situation. There's all sorts of stuff there, and again, some of these things that you thought, oh, this is it, and it's not it.
Yeah.
But his health is the number one driver. But I think we got a lot to choose. This was, again, a lot of really good stuff here. I think for setting us up for as we, head into the fourth. And Paul, I hope to see you in person in
Yeah.
Milford next weekend. We both get back east, and and I appreciate you. Staying doing this a little bit later at night than normal, and but I great conversation. Really enjoyed it, and look forward to a Fourth of July in our next conversation. So.
Happy
Great.
4th of July.
You go USA, right?
That's
So
right.
take it easy, Paul.
I'm going to be watching on the plane.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you got that. There you go. Yeah,
I'll be flying that night.
it'll be an interesting day, but I tell you that the 32 becomes daunting now because there's a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of rounds you got to get through to win this thing. But it'll
Yeah.
be just the fact they're going to be in it is going to be great. So looking
Exactly.
forward to it, Paul, and take care. Have a great flight.
Okay. Bye bye.